All right. That's one thing I'm not doing. I'm not hating on people and stuff like that. So anyway, I don't feel like doing an intro. Welcome to the Rave of Darkness and this and blah 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 blah. And I'm talking to some friends of mine about some stuff and intro. Yes. This video is going to be sponsored and brought to you by these guys right here. And thank you guys for sitting here doing this on this really sleepy day of mine.
Yeah, right after Thanksgiving.
Right after Thanksgiving. All right, so we're just talking about stuff having to do with the God scene in general. The gods, I guess, should I say the God scene in general, the God scene out here where we live?
Yeah, I would say Gotham's God scene.
Okay, we'll go with that.
Yeah, because we don't know about anybody else's.
I'm glad you're here. But no, one thing I keep getting asked about, and it's this one guy in particular. Oh my God, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Jabril hit me up on Instagram with this really serious. He was like the way it was typed was like so serious, like he means this. But he actually asked me, what are the obvious signs that one is going through their awakening?
Ooh.
And that got me to thinking, because when it comes to okay, for lack of better terms, if you haven't learned by now, the awakening is like the vampire form of puberty. It's like when you're starting to notice things and learn things and all that, because
I
you're
went
being
through that
turned
in the
90s. Right. No, but a lot of other people might have the same question that this guy had. So I'm just, I'm throwing it out there. By the way, your screen cut off again.
Hold on one sec. Let me see if I can fix that. Thanatos Ventrue having
there you go.
Technical difficulties.
Okay.
All right. When it does that, just tell me. I'll swap it out real quick.
Okay. But in any event, because he asked that, I just decided, hey, let me ask you guys, what was the awakening like for y'all? Okay, let me go by his question. What was the obvious signs of awakening?
For me,
your obvious signs.
First, it says block shadows down on the bottom. I, of course, am Lord Thanatos Ventrue. For me, my awakening was a little different. All right, the community itself was different at the time. There were no sires. We bought the original long black veils. All right, and you were part of Sabretooth, and all you had to do was go to Mother, and that was it. So there wasn't really people to teach us. We had the long black veils to teach us, and luckily, by the time I had heard about the hidden shadow parties, aka the Dark Realm. All right, but it just got deemed the hidden shadow parties. All right. By the time I had gotten to that, I had already moved in with the Orion family. So I wasn't an Orion at any point in time. I had just moved in with members of the Orion family in Canarsie, which was Lady Sage, Father Vincent, Stephen O'Malley, Margot Orion / O'Malley, and Sean Sinner O'Malley. All right. At the time, I wasn't O'Malley. All right. So I had moved in to the house. So, I got a lot of different like stories and more like how you would handle a situation. All right. So I got a lot of that. So I was able to piece together what one was supposed to do when you got into trouble, because sires weren't really a big thing yet. So, it was more like people that hung around the community. You get to ask them stories. All right. Or you get to ask their experiences, and you formulate how you're supposed to act.
What I'm getting from him, from what he was saying, though, was it's like the community.
Here we go.
Kind of pulls it out of you, or pull it out of him.
Yeah.
Or the community helps with it collectively.
Yes, originally.
That's what I was about to ask. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Because I'd never heard that before. That's not how it was brought to me, and that's not what happened with me. What were the obvious signs that you were going through your awakening?
My name is Sir DC Shadows of Clan Hidden Shadows. My awakening was I wouldn't even say it was strange. It happened around during the time my freshman year of high school, because I was
Jeez.
you know it's like puberty, like I said, puberty. But during the time when it happened for me, it came in the form of, okay, you felt out of place, like you didn't in the mundane world. You felt like you didn't belong in this particular group or that group. But what started for me was I started to see other people who had sigils on their neck. At the time, I didn't know what it was. And my first interaction with way back in the day, the very first time I met him, when he was going by what I believe is Eric of Troy. And he walked into Barnes and Nobles on 84th and Broadway, and I was with a group of friends. And he was just standing at the other end of the New Age book section. And I'm just staring at him, and I was fascinated.
Time out. Who was this again?
Dire Wolf.
Okay. Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But when he was a
So he was in
vampire,
the New
right?
Age.
Or was he already a wolf at that point?
I think he was already a wolf at that point. He was
Oh,
going
okay.
by Eric of Troy. And,
Okay.
I was in a bookstore with a group of friends, and I just happened to see him. They were like kind of shook, but me, it was a sense of fascination. I said, you know what? I had a feeling I was going to run into someone or a group of people who are a part of that subculture that will lead to my awakening. So when I,
So you saying hold on. You saying you knew what the awakening and all that was, like
yeah, because
beforehand?
yeah, my sense of understanding of the lifestyle itself, I knew that there were people out there, so I went looking, or it better yet, for lack of term, came looking. Like I'm a psychic vampire. Like as you know, I'm drawn to crowds. It's not always necessarily in a physical sense, in those subtle moments in that awakening, where it's one moment you could be tired, then you can go into a room full of people, and then you wake up, the energy surrounding you. You wake up, come to life. That was how it was for me the first time I went to a Shadows party years ago. The exact same thing happened. It's like, wow, the energy was a lot. The crowd,
Mm-hmm.
was giving off the energy, interacting with certain folks, gave off that energy. So these little subtle awakenings is what led to, okay, an aha moment for me.
Okay. For Thanatos, it was. Were you okay? Before I even put words in your mouth, were you saying the community is was there to help you go through your awakening? Is that
Yes.
what you were saying, or the community?
Everything from
Oh, okay.
Father Vincent to Lady Sage, um, Sean Sinner O'Malley had a lot to do with it. Also the friends I hung out with. Like there was a kid back in the day. His name was Julian. All right, it was a tall, skinny. I think he was Dominican kid. He used to carry a pool cue case with a sword in it. All right, and he hung around like I used to work next to Halloween Adventure at Darts on Q, which is now Gothic Renaissance. All right, but that was originally my
Right.
store.
Right.
All right, so I worked right next to Halloween Adventure. Kind of worked out. All right, so you know I hung around with all these kids that like Julian had been in the community for a while. Of course, that wasn't his real name. I don't know what his real name was, but he was this kid.
Of
He was
course.
younger than me, and he knew more about the community than I did. So he was like a sense my first mentor. All right, like he introduced me. Then I met Dark Angel when he was still a fledgling. All right, I was there when he got his Calmay. I was there when he got his eldership. All right. So like I've seen
Nice.
people grow in the community and I've listened to how they dealt with the community. All right. And I listened to how traditions were supposed to be, and that's how I became the vampire that I am now. All right. It's listening to other people's experiences of how they dealt with the community. Going to Hidden Shadows party.
Right.
I mean, even Xanatos gave me pointers at one point how I should deal with stuff. So, like, the community was my awakening. All right. The community helped me become who I am today. Not this community, the old community, like the 90s, early 2000s.
Because Dark Child, I want to tap on something you said too. But I also want to get into, because the guy asked me this, like mental and physical changes when you're going through your awakening. Is there anything in particular you noticed where it was like, yo, this isn't right, or man, this is weird? And the more you got into your vampirism after you realize, however you realize it, you realize vampires
Well,
are real, that people run around.
originally
This
I
is
was
a
sanguine.
culture.
I think,
Notice things about yourself that
I
was
think,
like,
I think,
oh,
yeah,
okay.
I think everyone kind of started as sanguine. All right. Some people stayed with it. I transferred over to metaphysical. All right. Feeding off of energy is way more fun. All right. And less things can be caught. All right. And I think something in me told me this is not what I want to be, but I want to be a vampire and I want to be goth. So that's when I started reading into psychic vampires. And that's when I really became who I was supposed to be. All right. Because the other way, as much as it's
Mm-hmm.
depicted in movies, all right, it's not what was calling to me. I was trying to follow a movie, and I'm not a movie, I'm a person. I'm living the lifestyle of a creature. All right. So to live that lifestyle, I have to live the lifestyle of the creature I want to be. All right. Not what the movies depict
Mm-hmm.
me to be. So that was part of
Mm-hmm.
an awakening and a part of a side of myself. I had to find who is Thanatos. All right. And what does he do in this community? So Thanatos is not sanguine. He is a psychic vampire. All right. Thanatos, the Greek god of death, who I was named after. All right. It is about death. Death isn't about life. Life is blood. All right. So death is about the energy of life. All right. So that's what I became.
Oh, okay. All
Okay.
right. So, Darkchild, physical changes, mental changes. What did you notice about yourself where it was like, oh, okay, this is happening and I know why?
Free advertisement. Free advertisement.
All
Um,
right. Yeah, Darkchild, my bad.
for me, in the sense, it was more like it.
Now you're breaking up. What's wrong with you? Say that last part again.
I said the best way I can explain it in a metaphysical sense. You know how Spider-Man has his spidey senses. It was kind of somewhat similar like that. I mean, like I could sit in a room and someone's phone would ring, and I would know exactly who the hell it was. And it used to bug me. I'm like, why? How do I know this so often? Or you can tell there's a change in the air when it comes to the energy, or
Mm-hmm.
um, when you shake his hand, you can kind of just like breathe in a sense without them actually opening their mouth. Their actions just kind of show it.
Mm-hmm.
With because I believe in auras. Auras is something I'm really big on. So it's like if I shake your hand, you got whether it's good intentions or bad intentions. These were things like little by little I started to pick up. In a physical sense, my first time in the community within itself, it was more the aesthetics that I feel gradually helped me change my physical appearance. Not to necessarily perpetrate, but just to kind of give myself the image that I saw myself as. Because I noticed that everyone in the community has a physical appearance where they're either were panthers, fae. There was all different types of creatures. At that particular point, it helped me to understand that the community itself wasn't just about vampires or other
Mm-hmm.
you cross paths with, and you say, okay, so it isn't just vampires, other creatures besides myself. But that, like, yeah, that's how I started to notice these things little by little.
Okay, well, it's so weird. I am such a weirdo in every aspect. And I say that because obviously growing up in the hood and hood things happen and you do hood things, and then something like anything goth comes along, you are now the weirdo if you're
Yep.
into that, from the music to the way you dress or whatever. But even when I became known in the goth community, there were things within the goth community that the goths were like, yo, dude, you're a weirdo. And I'm realizing it now because one of the things is, okay, let's be honest. All vampires in fiction, in media, and in reality are energy beings.
Yes.
We all, in some way, shape, or form, are feeding off of energy, using energy to guide us somewhere. A person's energy. But energy is not how I got turned. And energy is not what brought me to the scene. And energy is not how I discovered the people I discovered. For me, it was the old-fashioned way. So when everybody's saying energy, oh God, I just thought of something else too about energy, man. I like to talk about. But when everybody's always talking about energy this and energy that, it makes me think like, I wonder if people, not you people, but like new people coming in, know that there are other types of vamps and stuff out there. There are other ways that this goes. And it also makes me wonder, and I think we talked about this before, is there a way, now this I wouldn't know about, where like, is there like a bunch of energy vamps come together and transfer energy back and forth to each other? Is that a way of feeding? You understand what I'm
It is.
saying? Like,
It can be done.
I know people who look. Go
Um.
ahead, it can be done. I
Oh.
hear you.
I was agreeing with you, but it can be done. It has somewhat in my personal house meetings. A lot of my members are psychic vampires, so we do this conclave where we build off of each other's power for what we've done over the last month, and we can always tell when someone's having a bad day before they start speaking. All right, so
Mm-hmm.
we can read the energy in the room. And then as a family, we come together and give moral support to that particular member. All right. Because as they start speaking, it comes out. All right. And we felt it. All right. We always, or at least what I try to do is I make that person go last. All right. So everybody else has gotten their words out. And whoever I feel is on some negative shit, I have them go last. So we can either help them
Mm-hmm.
or we can make the negative stuff go away. All right. So I have heard of psychic vampires getting together and feeding off each other. All right. But it's also been involved in extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw the smile. You knew what I meant. So that the exchange of energy in the bedroom.
Like I agree that can be done in terms of
Called an
feeding
orgy.
because this this goes back to what I was saying before. It's more so if you know a group of people from it's okay, but the exchange of energy, there's good and there's bad. Like he just said, sometimes you can just read the room and you can feel it, and it's like you have to ask yourself, am I willing to make an exchange and then take on whatever it is that they're embodying, and then I would have to try to cleanse that within myself at the end of the day. Like that, it has its ups and its downs. Like that can be really problematic.
It can.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I
Taking
think we
someone's
all have
negative
gone through
energy.
that in some way.
Yeah. Taking someone's negative energy and attempting to filter it through your energy so it comes out positive on the other end can be very draining.
That's something that specific. There are specific types of vamps who do that and who are there for that.
Yes.
That's kind of like psychiatrists and such, and doctors like that in the mundane world.
Yeah.
They hear your problems and take your problems and they try to help you through it or fix it in a way where you're gonna go through it no matter what. But when you come out of it, you're a better person. You
Right.
know it's just like the vampire version of that, and I understand that. I'm asking because maybe I'm not. I know people like me are the minority, and I'm okay with that. But there might be, even with that said, there's going to be other people out there who are not so, or let's just say, didn't get into this through exchange of energy in the plain energy sense. They might get their energy from bodily fluids, and so I think it's important that no matter what kind of vamp you are, what type of vamp, the species of vamp you are, you should know that there are other types out there and what they do.
Absolutely.
Is actually something worth touching on because, like you said, there's new people coming into the community who have a limited idea of okay, it's more than this. Then like you, I put it this way: you got some like Thanatos, so he can agree with me on this one. Like there was a group of kids that came to the stores, and we kind of called them the generation.
Yeah.
The thing that we know, things that they'll say, "Oh, I joined the community because the aesthetics is is dope." But what they don't understand is like you got the surface. There's a whole lot that's way beneath that down that rabbit hole. Like it's up to them whether or not they want to go down that rabbit hole.
Right.
And if they do go down that rabbit hole, can they not only comprehend, but will they be able to handle that? Because come on, like look in the community already. We had a few people, some that we know, who went down and they had a way of thinking of it, but then the community just basically ate them up and spit them out. Just spit them out.
Mhm.
Like we've seen this happen before.
Yeah, we were
So
talking about false awakenings.
there we go.
Yes, I like that term. That's a good term.
Thank you.
Yep.
That should
Thank
be
you.
known to everybody in the
That's the
community. False
that's
awakenings.
that's the
Mhm.
people that get into the community and really believe they're vampires. That
Yeah.
really believe that they're being psychically attacked or that people are coming for them or anything like on the negative. They take all the negative aspects to the community and believe that it's really happening to them. Now there are chances
Mhm.
that we do know a lot of pagans that are members of the community, all right? And if they put a hex on someone, that is completely possible. We're not saying that's not possible. But if you just got into the
Right.
community and you don't know nobody, why is someone putting a hex on you? All right? So it's little
Yeah.
things like that. The false awakening is the people that draw on the negative energy of the community and what the community is and switches it to in a sense not be evil, all right, because they're not trying to be evil, they're playing their character too much, all right, they're overacting, all right, that is a false awakening, an overacting. Thanatos as a false awakening is I would have never come out during the day and I would have believed that I could only get nighttime jobs because vampires don't work during the day. God damn it, I am not a vampire. All right? They believe that if they step into the sun, they're going to explode because they've been turned. No, that's a false awakening. All right? And that
That
those
is
are
the people who, when I'm like teaching people, I tell them, yo, look, yes, there are going to be a lot of weird things that go on in the scene. Or if you are going through your awakening, you truly been turned. And by that, I mean by people who matter, people who know this stuff, people who are going to stick around to be there to teach you, to be your parent, to be your sire the way a
yeah.
parent is supposed to be. Then
Yes,
you're
they're
going to
not going to
notice
bail.
certain
They're not
things.
going to bail on you. They're not going to leave you to fend to yourself.
If you got people there to do that for you, then you're going to notice things that's going to seem fictional, such as we spoke about, certain physical and mental things that you might have to endure going through your awakening. You're going to notice certain things that seem fake. You're going to put it like this: you're going to notice certain things happening that if you try to tell somebody else about it, they're going to call you crazy.
Yeah.
They're going to say you read too many books. They're going to say you watch too much TV. They're not going to believe that this can actually
Oh,
happen.
my favorite
And
one is you're in a cult. That's my favorite
oh
one.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's like a whole different topic because you got people who, like I explained it earlier on this same damn YouTube channel. People use the term umbrella. Oh,
Yeah.
blah 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 is under the same umbrella as blah blah blah.
Yeah. Pyramid scheme.
X-Men is under the same umbrella as comics and no. I use a tree. I say you got this one black tree in the forest. It's the goth tree.
Yeah.
The tree is just goth or alternative people, goth. As the tree goes up, the branches coming off the tree are the different types of creatures and beings within the goth scene.
Yeah, and it's
So
not only
one goth
vampires.
tree.
All right, we
No,
can't.
I'm about to
Yeah,
say one goth tree.
yes,
One goth tree
covers
was torn
everything.
off into a branch of vampires, a branch of wolves, a branch of elves, a branch of fairies, a branch
Exactly,
of witches who practice Wiccan, a branch of just
everything.
regular goth people
Yeah,
who might be into BDSM.
right.
You know, it's one tree with a bunch of branches of. Okay, now that we establish that, like using that as an example.
Exactly.
Then you got the people who are like, to come full circle to what you were saying. You got the people who just can't for the life of them believe that this can happen. And then you got another set of people who, once they get into it, they get into the fantasy aspect of it. So they are trying to live that fantasy before they even take time to learn the scene, to learn that there's a reality to this. So to them, oh no, I've been turned, so now I can't go out in the sun. Yeah, we all have, like me personally, I have an issue with the sun. It does things to my skin, and the older I'm getting, the worse it's getting.
Yeah,
I've
but
had
this
the
is why
doctors
you
tell
work
me that.
nights. This is your real life has problems like that.
And not only that, but
Yeah.
you know what? You know, with that said, you know what the solution to my sun problem was?
Mm,
Put grease and baby oil on you when you go out.
nice.
Problem solved.
Problem
Or at least
solved.
for a couple of hours. You know,
Yeah.
the doctor told me that. It was like, this is not going to get any better. Your skin is just going to get worse and worse in the sun every time you're out in the sun as you get older. Okay, so now I know that. Now I want to bring up a point with this. You also have I don't know. You want to get going with the whole fantasy aspect. Blah 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 blah. Garlic. I love
Uh,
garlic.
I love garlic. Mint
So that
garlic.
goes out
All
the
right.
window.
Yeah, all that.
What else? I'm going to see my reflection. If not, I wouldn't be filming this right now.
Right.
You know, those you got your ridiculous vampire tropes, and you got the ones that actually kind of make sense.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why I'm bringing on is okay. The whole you only sleep during the day and blah blah blah.
Well, what about
Okay,
sleeping
yeah,
in a
depending
coffin?
on
We don't
what.
sleep
Yeah,
in
that
coffins.
goes too deep. You know, that goes too deep into the fantasy.
Yeah.
I'm almost 7 feet tall. I ain't putting no coffin in no damn apartment. That's just not gonna happen.
Right.
You know what I mean? But what I'm saying is, like, you got your nice, cool, fun to make believe, and then you got the, oh my God, this make believe is real.
Right.
And some people go too far with that realness. And then when you think like that, or a sire lets their kid, their child think like that, and you bring them around people like us, and they got the mentality of, I gotta look like this and act like this. Okay, we're gonna go to party. Okay, now that I've been turned, I don't know what the sun's gonna do to me in the morning. And you say that around me at an event, I'm gonna look at you like you got two hats. I'm gonna look at you like you stupid. You know, because come on, like, first of all, why are you here? If I'm at an event and you
Mm-hmm.
believe that you're with somebody who can vouch for you, now I gotta look at that person that vouch for you like,
Yeah. Like,
yo,
what the fuck?
we need to talk because
Yeah.
you
What are you
got them
doing?
believing, you got the worst things. Darkchild is falling around back there.
I don't know what he's doing.
I honestly blame that on a lot of the sires, a lot of the people who are allowed to turn people, aka given the rank as Cal May and over, to turn people, to bring people into the scene, but they themselves don't have enough knowledge to teach these people when they come. So in turn, now you're going to have a long list of people. You got a whole chain of people who are coming into this with the knowledge of the goth scene in real life being whatever it is they see on TV in a movie,
Right.
because that's where they cite ideas from.
Right.
That's why ever since Dan came out, I met about 13 girls within a year named Akasha. This
Oh.
is why we have like we got people who, women who, when they want to go out, they go to an event dressed like Celine from Underworld, because Underworld was their awakening process or the start to their awakening. So to them, this is what introduced them to the God scene.
Oh,
That's
see,
fine. But when you are following it down to a T, come on, bro. Like this is an idea that came from somebody's head. They wrote it down and they made a movie out of it, and you're taking their idea and trying to make it your reality.
I remember. So me, I think it was Father Vincent, Lady Sage, and I don't remember. I just remember Father Vincent and Lady Sage. There were other people with us. I truly don't remember who they are, so I'm not going to call out people's names. All right, but we went
Right,
to
right,
see
right.
Blade in movie theaters when it first came out. Maybe 2 weeks after the movie came out, we got an influx of people coming in and wanting to get fangs. And every other person was named Deacon, like Deacon Frost.
Yes,
One
yes.
guy even said he was Deacon Frost, and he had his whole backstory. And he came in when the sun came down, and his appointment had to be at nighttime. And oh my god, like it's
When I first started to actually meet important people, like the elders and stuff of the community, there was two or three people. I'm slow. I met this dude whose name was Wes. That's all I knew. He
okay.
was dark skinned and his name was Wes. And people like that I envied because being goth wasn't a black thing. So for this dude to be black as tar and be goth and call himself a vampire,
You were like, yeah,
it was inspiring to me. It made me feel like I could be myself.
yeah.
Fast forward now, I'm meeting these other elders and all that. Turns out this kid was a nobody. His name is Wes because he's from the hood, but it was short for Wesley because
Oh,
he idolized Wesley Snipes because he idolized Blade. And
okay.
my brain did not put that together until about 6 years later. I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Oh my goodness. So, yeah, you take a lot of these movies and shows and stuff away and have the scene that's going to die.
Yeah.
Why? Because they jumped into this because of what they saw fiction in fiction and read in the book and whatever, and their sires allowed them to come in, or people allowed them to come in with that mentality. Oh, subcultures of all kinds have existed way before anything you see in the movies and stuff. I'll go as far as saying a lot of these TV shows and movies that have to do with being goth or have to do with witchcraft or have to do with vampires and werewolves probably came from the fact that the writers stumbled across people who lived the lifestyle in real life and were intrigued by the fact that people walk around living like this. So they decided to take it and make fiction out of it.
Yep.
I will argue and say that's how it happened. But when that fiction makes $1 billion, now people flip it. Now people think they need that in order to become something big, to be known, to be. You can't call yourself at this point in this day and age. You can't come into the scene and say your name is Lucian and you're not a vampire, but you're in the goth scene. Everybody's gonna look at you and think, "Oh, right."
Bro, let me go on topic with that one because this Underworld came out, dudes was talking about their hybrids and
Oh my
Oh
God,
no,
yes.
no, we're not gonna
and shit.
touch the hybrids. All right, and come and tell me you're a hybrid. Get the out of my house. I don't take hybrids. You're either a
Yeah,
orc,
yeah, yo,
a fairy, a skinwalker,
I
whatever,
hate it.
whatever one creature you are. I got you. When you say you are a hybrid, no, you're not. Go back and watch Underworld.
Yo, do you,
We all know that nobody knew what the term lichen was until Underworld.
No,
Now, the first
I'll have to
time I
admit,
heard,
there were things before Underworld. There was book series by Laurel K. Hamilton that went into Lycan. All right,
no,
Lycanthrope.
that's what I'm saying.
All right,
The
Lycanthrope.
the the
All
most
right,
people did
was.
not hear
Oh
the
yeah, no.
term
I mean,
lichen
people that did the
until
research.
Underworld. Now, I remember You know how I heard the first time I heard the word lichen? It
Right.
was a joke. Friend of mine in a gang growing up in Brooklyn said to me because I was looking at I believe it was The Howling.
Yeah.
Now, when did The Howling come out?
Yeah,
The Howling came out in
that's
like the early
80s.
80s or
Yeah.
something.
And they were
Right.
talking about lycanthrope.
In the movie, the guy said, blah, 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 about this person. We got to study their lycanthropy.
Yeah, and you're like, wait,
And
what?
I just found that word intriguing. So I started saying some stupid joke, like calling people that as a joke, not really knowing what it meant, you know? So as a joke, one of my boys said, he used to always say, yo, that liking kid, or you liking to blah, 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 because he didn't know what it meant either. He
Right.
would say the word liking as a joke. Fast forward to like American Werewolf, which also came out like 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
And I remember them saying that in that movie, but I remember somebody saying something about it. And they said lycanthropy. And I was like, ew, that's not how you pronounce the word. The word
Yeah.
is called lycanthropy.
Yeah.
And it
You
hit me.
mutilated it.
Right, even right. Now I don't hear it no more for the next 20 years. Underworld comes out. And now thousands of people come to me and tell me, no, I'm a lichen. I got lichen in my bloodstream. I'm lichen. Let me ask you a question. If you're a lichen, what's the full word? Because lichen is short for the full word. What's the full word? Nobody knows what the hell
No, because
lycanthropy
they
is
watched
because it
Underworld.
doesn't sound like because Underworld only said lichen.
That's right.
No one knows what lycanthropy is. And I'm like, yo, it's messed up when you got to teach people who call themselves werewolves about lycanthropy and you're a vampire. Oh,
There are a lot of wolves, the older wolves that are in this community that did the research, that
mm-hmm.
researched what their character in the community was going to be. All right, and they'll tell you what the full word is. The newer generation coming in, they saw it in a movie. They didn't even choose to Google it and see where it comes from. They're just like it means wolf. I'm a werewolf. No, no. The original, all right,
No.
the older wolves. I mean, a lot of wolves didn't exist when I first came in. All right, the vampires, the vampires in charge, which was Father Sebastian at the time and Father Vincent when they were working together, didn't really believe in wolves. They were building a vampire community, so they forced a lot of the older that are now older wolves when they first came in. They told them, "Oh, you're not a wolf. All right, you're a vampire that has animalistic tendencies. All right."
Which what most vampires do anyway.
Yeah, I know. So when being a werewolf was finally accepted in the community, they stopped pretending to be vampires and chose to be what they really were from the beginning, which is wolves. All right, they had the
Wow,
wolf
that
men.
is so
Yeah,
bad. Wow,
that's
that
history of this
sucks.
community. They didn't allow werewolves in. No, you're a vampire. You just have animalistic
And so,
tendencies. All right, and then
so as far as
when they were
the
finally
werewolves go,
accepted as wolves, that's when they came out, and some of the older vampires chastated them. Oh, well, you were a vampire. No, I was told to be a vampire. That's not who I am. All right, who I
Mm.
am is a
I've
werewolf.
never heard this before. This is the first
This
time
this
hearing
is
this.
with
old community. You were not allowed to be a werewolf. They just told you you're a vampire with animalistic tendencies. All right, I forgot what clan that is in White Wolf, but there is a clan like that, and you were told you were that type of vampire, and they weren't allowed to be wolves. So when they finally came out as wolves, they're being their true form, they're being their true character. All right? They're being who they were supposed to be when they're not being chastised for who they were supposed to be. And then older vampires say, "Oh, well, you were a werewolf or you were a vampire. Why are you a werewolf now? You're seeking power because you couldn't get power as a vampire." No, I'm starting from scratch as a wolf and building my house, tribe, pack, whatever it is, to be what I want it to be, not based off of the vampire montage, like an elder. All right, they're building what they truly believe an alpha to be. All right, while an elder and an alpha are supposed to be equal. An alpha is supposed to be the head of a pack, a tribe, whatever the wolves call. I'm not a wolf, so I don't know, but I know pack and tribe. All right, they're supposed to be what the
Usually,
equivalent.
a
Yeah,
pack of werewolves is a family of vampires.
right.
This should just be a clan,
A clan or a
you
house.
know,
All right, so and then
or a house.
I guess a tribe is supposed to be their version of a clan, I guess, because you have your individual packs, and then when you get enough packs, you become a tribe. Kind of like if we get enough houses, we become a clan. So that's what I believe it was.
Mhm.
If I'm quoting or I'm misquoting, I apologize to the wolves. That's how I was taught. All right. Again, I saw the transformation of a lot of people that were originally vampires became wolves, and they were chastised for it. And it's incorrect because they were told to be something when they weren't that something. When we're talking about awakenings, they were forced into an awakening that they didn't want. They wanted to awaken as the creature they felt they were. So
Right.
that goes along the line of a false awakening, but not a false awakening that turns negative. They got their awakenings incorrectly. So their sire, instead of them letting them be who they were enforcing an old rule that wolves did not exist in the community. Finally, wolves are accepted in the community. So now you have people being able to do the research and find out who they really are. You have false awakening in wolves. Those, like you said, you asked them, what's the full word? If you don't know the full word, you didn't do the research into who your character really is. So there could be false awakenings in the skinwalkers. All right, anybody who
So
changes
I
shape, shapeshifters, were rats, were swans, were wolves, were pandas, all that came out after Laurel K. Hamilton said there's a whole species of different types of wares. All right, and then you have
Yeah.
the were panda.
The wear
Yeah,
part is a gene. It was called the wear gene.
right,
If you had the wear gene and you got the bodily fluids of anything that wasn't human
right.
in your body through a bite, you became
That
half of what
creature,
you were and half of that creature.
right.
So if you're a human with the wear gene and you get bit by a bear, you become a
We're
bear.
bear.
If you
All
get
right,
bit by a snake, you become a wolf, and so
right,
on and so forth.
right.
That's the way it used to, the old history, the old books I read, you
Right.
know,
And the people, a lot of people, there
look,
are people out there. I've met people that said that they're aware rat. I've heard people say they're aware bear. I've heard people say they're aware horse. Listen, if you got a background story and you're okay with that in the community and you dress like that, all power to you. All right? All
yo,
power
look,
to you.
if my thing is, if what you say and makes sense, I'm gonna laugh at it, but it's gonna rock out with me because you made sense to me. So
Yeah.
go ahead,
so
dog child. I see you.
what is the correlation between wolves and dragons as of late? Like what are the between the two? Because I've seen people who say they have connections or some distinction to dragons or wolves or like I said, hybrid. And for that sense, I was confused by a lot of this shit.
All right.
Man, yeah, I can't answer. I
Dragons
wish
were
somebody would
supposed
try
to
to tell
be
me that they did.
according to lore, dragons were supposed to be relatives of vampires. All right, a lot of that is mixed between um, Order of the Dracul, which is Dracula's bloodline, Order of the Dragon. All right, that's where Da got the idea for Order of the Dragon, which was named after vampire Dracula's bloodline. I was there when he was thinking of the name. We were sitting in Halloween Adventure. All right, like this is all history. All right, so he was like, "Yo, I'm gonna name it the Dragon," and he showed me the book and everything that he was gonna do it from. All right, so originally Dracula, if you go by Dracula and you go by that Dracula is supposed to be the father to all vampires, that he was House of the Dragon or Order of the Dragon. They felt that dragons were relatives to vampires in certain lore. All right. Now that, of course, we can't prove that. There's no fucking dragons that, excuse my French. There's no dragons that live in this world today that we can ask, do vampires exist from you?
You're right. Yeah.
All right. So we have to go off of what we were taught. All right. I learned that later after I had become a vampire in different lore and legends. All right. I had never heard that dragons were the form of or relative to wolves. All right. I of course, if you go by underworld, all right, all the vampires came from one immortal person that got bit by a bat, and all the wolves came from one immortal person that got bit by a wolf. If you go by lore, all right, it's the were. If you have the were gene, all right, that is supposed to be like in a sense a mutant type gene that's in your system, and you get bit by an animal, you become half human and half that animal. All right, if you that's another lore. That's how I was taught. All right, so of course the one that became the biggest was werewolves because that's like Hollywood's go-to on scary creatures. All right, like I don't know if someone had made a cobra, I probably would have ran in out the room scared, half snake and half man.
Exactly.
Woo. All right, but this is what Hollywood went with. So a lot of people got the idea when they went to go see a movie and they were attracted to that type of movie. So if you're smart and you want to become the awakened you want to be, you do the research. All right. And that's what I'm famous for. I can find anything on the web. All right. I just have certain key phrases that I know when I'm looking for something. So if someone tells me to do research, they come into my house and they want to be a dark fairy. I will find everything that I can find and send it to them about a dark fairy so they can read and see what they want to become based off of what I found. They might be able to find additional things. I mean, I have a Google Classroom that I teach my childers through. All right. And I have an initiate classroom. All right. I don't do prospect. I call them initiates. All right. And then I have a fledgling classroom. And then I have a Calmay classroom. And then I have optional classrooms, which is psychic vampires and otherkin. The otherkin describes every other type of gothic creature that I know, and whatever I found online exists inside the community, and you get to learn what they are. That's the
And
classroom.
that's one of my topics for
Yeah.
another episode or another of these episodes. Is going to be the
If I
different types of
can, I can
creatures
I
within the
can
community.
get the information that I built the class with, and I'll send it to you, Lox. All right. So
Okay.
what you will call it, that's where my childers, by the time they get to otherkin, that's where they decide what they want to be, what creature calls to them. All right, because not
Right.
everyone that comes into my house is a vampire. I can't expect it. I'm not going to do the same mistake that the original elders. You're a vampire. What if they're not a vampire? Then they're going to get a false awakening.
Mm-hmm.
All right. They might not go the way I
Yeah.
want them to. So I want them to choose what their creature is. Like at one point, I had a griffin in my house. All right. Like that was their
Wow.
creature. All right. So that's what they were. They had a whole persona built around it. And they knew they weren't really a griffin, but that was their creature. All right. So I've had angels in my house. I've had demons in my house. I've had dark fairies. I've had light fairies. There are actually many different types of fairies that I found out.
Yeah, I
Um,
know, man. That is true.
that is
That
that
is
that that
true.
they're actually, if you break it down to, it's two different types of courts of fairies, and then the sub courts
Mm-hmm.
underneath each. There's like a light court and a dark court, and then there are the multiple different fairy kin that are under each court. All right, which is a lot. There are dragons.
Yeah.
Like a lot of Order of the Dragon is all dragon type characters. So and they base their whole family on getting all the dragons together. But they have some vampires in there as well. All right, you can't have a house of just one archetype. It gets boring. All
Not
right.
in this day and age anymore.
Yeah.
Not in
Well.
this day and age
Yeah.
anymore.
I
You
just
can't.
won't
It's too
take a
many different
hybrid.
types of creatures.
All right. I won't take a hybrid. Hybrids don't exist. You can't be two different creatures. All right. No. I'm
I
not
agree.
gonna base it off a movie. So
I mean, if people going to say that that's what they are now that Underworld then came and went,
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask, and people who know me know this. I'm gonna ask for, tell me why do you say that? I want
Yeah.
an explanation.
I want an explanation. They
You
don't have
know,
an explanation.
I could lay out the stuff that the doctors and the hospitals, every time I was hospitalized, have told me that goes under the category of clinical vampirism. Meaning these things that are wrong with you are things that would be stereotypically considered in the realm of vampirism, or things that are wrong with you are under that
Okay.
vampire umbrella. You
Can I
understand?
freeze?
And
Did you guys
me
freeze?
being into being alternative and being into the goth scene, and then starting to have these problems, it was just easy to put the two together.
Yeah.
And because the proof was in the pudding for me. But how I got like this, that was a iffy body fluid bloody story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you understand? But
Understand.
that's how I discovered these things about me. And it's funny because here I am 30 some odd years into this, and I'm still discovering new stuff about me. And this is what people are not, if you making stuff up because you saw it in fiction and saying that this is you because it makes you feel good to do that because you're trying to impress other people, then whatever really is going on with you, you'll never know or you'll miss it because your energy is focused into the fake.
Yeah.
I focused to myself. So I started noticing things like I get sick really, really easily, but then I could get cut and it stop bleeding within a minute. And then by a week later, it's just a scar. Then I'll get cut again a month from now, and it seems like it won't heal. But then I'll get sick that night. Next day, I got a whole fever. And by that afternoon, I got a cold. And then by the day after that, it's gone like I never had the flu. You know, so I asked the doctors about that. I went to the doctor and asked the doctor about it. And they can't really explain it, but it goes under the category of that. Oh, okay, here's what the lady told me: the supernaturalness.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what does that even mean? And she said, every now and then, the things that happen to a human being that can't be explained and probably won't happen like that again. Somebody, you're probably going through something or involved in something that'll make this sudden explanation make sense. She knows about the scene. She said, in your case, it's vampirism. So I was like, you shouldn't have said that because now my excuse to everything is going to be because of my vampirism. And I use that as a joke now. But what she said makes sense. I might heal fast. I might catch the flu and be ready to die, but then be good by the next morning and ready to go back to work by that night. And people be like, yo, you sure you're okay? How are you feeling? I have my vampirism took care of that. Because there's no long drawn out explanation I could give you because I'm not a doctor. So if I tell you that, you're either gonna think it's fake and you're not gonna hear it, or you're gonna think, okay, that means you probably don't know. I turn my energy on myself. I study myself, not what fiction wanted me to study. I always say, whatever you see on TV, especially if it's a good story, it all came from somewhere.
What about the
You
fact
know?
that I'm pale all the time? When I go to the
No,
beach,
you're like,
I
you're like
sunburn.
white,
All right.
bro.
Damn.
But Dog Child, you tried to say something earlier. I had a feeling this conversation was going to go way longer than I wanted it to.
The correlation between dragons and wolves, there was also the topic of what you were saying where in fiction, these are the things that folks portrayed, which is why we were taught the difference between vampire with an I and vampire with a Y.
Yes, I
Yeah.
was going to say about that
Go
earlier
for
too.
it, DC. Go for it.
There were very distinct differences because like you said, with this generation now, they're only going based on what they're seeing in the media. But what they don't understand is our 30 plus years running endless already. We have that knowledge of, okay, what you're seeing is just an image of what Hollywood is portraying. Therefore, the knowledge base of what we know, because remember, vampirism can come in many forms. It's not always just, an undead creature of the night. Like, prime example, a leech. A leech drinks blood. That's similar to a form of vampirism, but it's not it's a creature. It's a creature, insect.
Yeah, leeches, ticks,
Yeah,
lice,
Mosquitoes.
vampire bats.
yeah.
There's a lot of different creatures that do this, and they need those red blood cells for survival. Do you understand? But then, when it comes to anything like that with a vamp, it's like horrible. It doesn't exist. No, people don't do that because that sort of thing shouldn't exist because that sort of thing is gross and there's no creatures that would do that and need that. All right, so what are these other creatures on the planet that do it? Explain them. You know what I mean? So yeah, I completely get it. Like I said, it's going back to what you were saying. There's the idea of a good writer, a creative person who likes to write stories, taking the things around them and making a good story out of it for fiction. Somebody could take the idea that leeches and ticks drink blood and turn that into a blockbuster finale, blockbuster, not finale, but a blockbuster feature of a movie in 2 years because of the story he wrote. But if you take that and add it to a person, then it becomes a vampire movie. You understand what I'm saying? That means the idea you had for vampires came from something that exists in real life.
Yeah.
So now you're going to turn around and say that we're fake because that stuff don't exist when the person who wrote that movie got it from creatures that actually do exist.
It's crazy because when you say that, you gotta think about it like this too. You said if someone says, "Oh, no, vampires don't exist," when you watch a zombie film, other than the zombie eating brains, what is it that they have to do? They have to get through the flesh and the blood and the guts in order to get to where it is they have to get to. So in some correlation, it makes sense.
It does make sense. It like, thanks to this TV show that came out. Before, a lot of movies already did it with the athletic zombies and the zombies that stop and try to think, okay, you went around the corner this way and I go around the corner that way, I could probably cut you off. Now they starting to think. Then you got the TV show where the zombie is a zombie, regular eat your brain zombie until they eat the brain. The more they eat, the more they start to revert back to the person they were before they became a zombie. That was something nobody ever saw in a zombie flick before. Now we got a bunch of people walk around the golf scene saying they zombies. As long as they eat meat or some sort of raw meat, they're not gonna, start dumbing out. And I'm like, you know what? Just on the strength that makes a tad bit of sense, I'm gonna let it rock. Just because of that. But I'm sorry. I've seen a few flicks where someone else already used that idea. So I can't say that that's original, but we're all walking around. We're vampires walking around right now. So who am I to, But I'm saying that to say they're going to steal what they think is cool. But two things with that. One, you should probably make sure other people think it's cool too.
Yeah.
And two, if other people think it's cool, then chances are they're gonna know where you got that from.
Mm-hmm.
So it should relate to you. My vampirism relates to me.
Yes.
I studied my vampirism with me, not what someone else did in some other goth movie and the way they look and the way their teeth are and blah, 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 blah. It relates to me because I studied me. I studied the stuff that was happening to me with my awakening. I put it together. Here I am. A lot of people don't do that. It's much easier just to say, oh, Wesley Snipes, Blade. My name is now Wesley. Oh, Reapers. My name is now Reaper because I saw it in Blade. And, I understand it's easier to do that now, but when you do that, it's just so much not thinking that you're doing. Like, again, if it's a hit movie, that means millions of people saw it, which means at least thousands of those people are going to know where you got that whole idea from. So if you're running around calling yourself a certain person's name, like, you can't be, and I actually saw this, brown hair, blue eyes, white, 100% Caucasian, always wearing a blazer in the scene, calling himself Angel.
Mm.
And I'm like, you really, so you really just looked at this TV show. You saw Buffy the Vampire Slayer and then saw how famous the TV show got and said, not only am I taking the name, but I'm gonna look like him. So I got short, spiky hair, and I'm wearing a long trench blazer all the time. And bro, come on. You know, that's my issue when it comes to that kind of stuff with the scene. That does not relate to you. You might be an actual, real, legit vampire, but no one's going to take you seriously because you took your vampirism and based everything from your look to the way you talk to what you do off of fiction. Be yourself.
Yes.
Be the vampire you are. And if you don't know how to do that, then you got to look within yourself and see your vampirism. And if you don't know what that means or can't do that, this is where your sire comes in. This is what the parents are for. The sire's job is to help them do that. Okay, I'm babbling now because, yeah, we got to go. But I just really wanted Dog Child to get that out, and I wanted to tap on the rest of that.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
First of all, thank you all for doing this because, yeah, this was actually a pretty cool conversation. I almost wish I didn't have to go to work every day so I could do this with different people every day. All right, so we're logging off now because this is too much and this is a lot of editing I got to do. And for those who watch, thank you for watching. For those who didn't watch, the hell with you.